Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum friends. Welcome to Scholars Hive. Friends, today we are going to learn about Shakespearean tragedy. Nature and definition. Tragedy is a very difficult concept to define, in spite of all that modern critics have said on this subject. Aristotle's definition of tragedy in the Poetics still remains the best. According to him, tragedy is a representation of an action which is serious, complete in itself, and of a certain magnitude. It is expressed in speech made beautiful in different ways in different parts of the play. It is acted, not narrated, and by exciting pity and fear gives a healthy relief to such emotions. Although Shakespeare did not have a conscious conception about tragedy, still from his tragedies and serious plays we can get together a notion of what constitutes Shakespearean tragedy. Shakespeare conceives tragedy as concerned with the ruin or restoration of the life of a man and of his soul. In many cases, it shows the struggle between good and evil. By far the most perspective comments about Shakespearean tragedy are those of Bradley, who most defines the essence of Shakespearean tragedy as a tale of suffering and calamity conducting to death. Although this remark captures what is common to Shakespearean tragedies, it may be stressed that every Shakespearean tragedy is unique in its way and that there are very few observations which one may make about one of them, which are also applicable to the others. The tragic hero. Shakespeare's tragedies are definitely built around a single personality who towers above the other characters. Shakespeare's tragic heroes have many qualities in common, although it is doubtful whether Shakespeare knew the poetics. His heroes, with the possible expectation of Macbeth, are all essentially good. Shakespeare's tragic heroes are of an extremely sensitive and poetic temperament. They also belong to the highest rank of society, the lowest in rank being Othello, who is at least a general whose descent may be traced to tragic flaw. A Shakespearean tragedy is above all a tragedy of character, though the environment, chance, and coincidence also play their own part. Although we refer to this trait as the tragic flaw, it is not necessarily always a shortcoming in itself. It is only in particular situation in which the hero is placed that particular quality of character becomes vitally damaging to him. It is quite correct to refer to them as tragedies of character. The role of chance and fate. Chance and fate, the latter sometimes in the form of the supernatural, also play their part in Shakespearean tragedies. However, they are never the starting point of the tragedies and are rather admitted into them when the story has already taken a definite course. The incident of the handkerchief in Othello is an example of pure chance which is exploited by the villain. But this chance takes place at a time when the seeds of jealousy have already attained a flourishing growth in Othello's mind. It is not the cause of Othello's jealousy. Theme and action. Shakespearean tragedy have a well-defined major theme which is often capable of being expressed in moral terms. The tragic action in Shakespearean somehow disturbs universal harmony and order and after the death of the hero, but there are often indications that the disturbed harmony will be restored. Thus, the action involves a twofold conflict that between man and the universal forces, and that in the mind of man. Of those two, it is the latter which is Shakespeare's prime concern. Shakespeare takes his stories from other sources, most of which have been identified, but he makes significant changes in the story as it comes to him from his source. It is those changes which often tell us how Shakespeare's mind works. The stories often include sensational incidents such as murder, madness, duels, and the like, but they arise naturally. Characterization. Although the tragic hero is the center of the writer's attention, at least one other character near him is also brought into the limelight. There are several other characters who have an important function in the story and whose characterization therefore receives appropriate attention. Shakespearean tragedies have unforgettable feminine characters, though the tragic heroes are all men. They also have well delineated villains, the most interesting of whom is Iago because of a note of mystery about his motives. Tragic effect. Even without knowing the poetics, Shakespeare manages to excite strong pity and terror in his tragedies. However, these are not the only emotions which they excite. Shakespearean tragedies embody a sense of profound suffering and sadness, and some of them end in a number of deaths. There is something towards the close which restores our faith in man's greatness and God's wise providence. We are given the impression that the suffering has not gone waste. It has either enabled the protagonist, other characters, or the audience to attain new insight or has worked towards a better future. Many Shakespearean tragedies characteristically end on a note of hope. The mature tragedies. The conceptions elaborated in Shakespeare's mature tragedies are complex. They are interrelations of themes even further extended, but there is no longer any sense of a gap between purpose and achievement. In Othello, the heart of the tragic experience is revealed in its full intensity. The emotional unity is reflected in character and in a more truly dramatic presentation of conflict. By this entry, the balance essential to right living between the passionate and rational elements in the personality is overthrown, and what should have been orderly, vital, and purposeful is plunged into disorder, death, and anarchy. Passion versus reason. The predominant tragic conflict in the mind of the tragic heroes in the mature tragedies is generally between passion and reason, as in the plays which preceded them. In other words, the opposition between reason and passion, first isolated through Othello and Iago in a dramatic conflict of personalities. Shakespeare's personal views. Many books have been written on subjects such as Shakespeare's religion, but in the plays themselves there is very little which can be definitely looked upon it coming from Shakespeare himself. On the whole, Shakespeare is the most impersonal writer. A well-known critic says, in the case of an author who left no personal papers and whose writings are mainly in dramatic form, it is not easy to be precise about his views and personal traits. Yet many have believed that Shakespeare's image is fully mirrored in his work. Thus impersonality also is relative, for while there are no explicit autobiographical touches in Shakespeare, even he could not have kept his own views, likes and dislikes entirely out of his writings.